morning, everyone. We'll be online in just a moment. There we go. Thank you. Anyone that wants to put in a speaker card, please do so with our Executive Officer, Fernando Campos, who is right here to my left. Welcome to the regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Public Works for today, Wednesday, March 8th, 2017.
Commissioner Rivas, Commissioner James, Commissioner Davis, and Commissioner Jacinto is present for quorum. Just to note for the record, Commissioner Repenning is in the room, but she just temporarily walked out of the room. Can we start with Bureau introductions, please, starting with Bureau of Sanitation?
Miguel Zarmetal, Bureau of Sanitation.
Brad Jensen, Bureau of Engineering.
Sephi Wiles, Bureau of Contract Administration.
Good morning, Ruben Flamenco, Bureau of Street Lighting.
Hugo Valencia, Bureau of Street Services.
Good morning, Ted Jordan, Public Works General Counsel.
Fernando Campos, Executive Officer. President James, we do not have any speaker cards under general public comment. We also have no commentary under the Neighborhood Council comments section. We did receive speaker cards on item number 1 for today's agenda.
All right, we'll close general public comment as well as the Neighborhood Council category of commentary. Our first item of business, the approval of the meeting minutes from the meeting of Friday, February 17th, 2017. Is there a second to my motion to approve those meeting minutes by Commissioner Davis? Any objection? With that objection, we'll approve those meeting minutes. Agenda item number 6. Specifications are submitted for board adoption and authorization to advertise for the invitation of bids. Council District 1 for the North Central Animal Services Center Phase 2. It's a rebid with the estimate of $11,204,406 and a bid receipt date of Wednesday, April 12th, 2017. Is there a second to my motion that we adopted or that we receive agenda item number 6 forthwith? By Commissioner Jacinto. Any objection? With that objection, we will do so. Agenda item number 5, Council Districts 1, 13, and 14. Specifications have been submitted for board adoption and authorization to advertise for the invitation of bids for the secondary sewer renewal program, Riverside Drive and Doris Place project. Estimate $4,292,637. The bid receipt date is Wednesday, April 12th, 2017. Is there a second to my motion that we receive agenda item number 5 forthwith? By Commissioner Jacinto. Any objection? With that objection, we will do that. Agenda item number 2, Council Districts 1, 7, 8, 13, 14, Bureaus of Engineering and Contract Administration, along with the Department of Transportation, requested contract award, Department of Transportation Highway Safety Improvement Program Cycles 4 and 5, recommending that the board declare KDC Incorporated, doing business as Dynalectric, the first low bidder, to be the lowest responsible bidder, and award them a contract for the project for $930,325, and authorize myself or 2 members of the Board of Public Works to execute the contract after approval as to form has been obtained from the city attorney. Joseph Keong. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. My name is Joseph Keong from LADOT. I'm here to recommend the board to award the contract to KDC DBA Dielectric for the lowest responsible bidder in the project cost of $930,325. This project is to install traffic signal at 2 unsignalized locations, 5 rectangular rapid flashing beacons, and 2 speed factor signs. 2 of the RFB will be installed along the Temple Street, and 3 of the RFB will be installed in the south and west and south LA, Los Angeles, and 1 traffic signal will be installed at the I-210 and Rossford.
Commissioner Davis, there were no protests from the second or third bids. Commissioner Davis?
Yeah, I wanted to discuss with you, or you discuss with me, quite actually, the inclusion program, the MSM, on this particular project. This is a locally funded construction project. It's not a federally funded project.
It is federally
Oh,
funded.
it is a federally funded project?
Yes.
Where are
It's
we?
Highway Safety Improvement Program. It's a federally funded project.
Okay. So where are we in terms of the inclusion on this particular project as it relates to Dynalectric?
Are you asking about the DBE goal?
Yes, sir.
They did the outreach effort, and according to the submittal, they have 0%. I believe it's 0% because they did the good faith effort. And this is some of the requirement. It's a substitute requirement that they actually do the DBE goal. So it's also satisfied the federal requirement that they do the good faith effort for the DBE.
So they did a good faith effort and there were no results in terms of businesses, diverse businesses, able to get an agreement from them as the prime. Is that correct?
Yes.
And obviously, this is not an area where we have some subspecialty areas where we just simply don't have individuals who are certified from certain communities. This is not one of those areas, right?
I'm sorry? Is
this, what was the issue? Let me ask the question this way. What was the issue in terms of this good faith effort that resulted in no inclusion, if you will? Do you know?
No, I do not know that.
They didn't have a discussion with you about that?
No.
Okay. What I noticed was that even though they have the best contract of the three, that the others did have some effort towards pledging and seeking to have some diverse inclusion. I do know that the federal government does have great standards in terms of inclusion.
That's correct.
But I was just curious, not knowing in terms of the good faith effort, just what happened in that process that did not allow them to achieve any whatsoever diverse inclusion, while those competitors, though they may have been numerically less appropriate for us to choose on behalf of the city, but yet nevertheless those individuals did have some effort towards inclusion. And so I was just curious about that and thought it would be important to ask you that question.
Okay, the selection process and the paperwork is handled by the BOE Bid and Award Group people. And during the process, they have not shared that information with me regarding the whether or not why Dielectric was not able to do what the other competitors have done in terms of the bid. So I may have to go back and ask the BOE Bid and Award people to find out exactly what happened. But to my understanding, any bidder, they are not necessary has to have DBE go in the bid as long as they do the good faith effort, because that's the federal requirement.
Sure.
That is not I do not believe it's a requirement, but it's as long as they do the good faith effort, then they satisfy the DBE goal.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Thank you for that answer.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. I would just add, really for the record, and maybe somewhat anecdotally, in the sense that and I recognize, I see what you see on this issue, but we do work with Dynalectric a fair amount on a number of these, and they are typically not a low bid that we end up having to have much of a discussion on waning numbers. I mean, we kind of look at the numbers citywide as we try to improve them. So I think your point is well taken. But I would just add that since we see a number of these, we see Dynalectric as a pretty common bidder, and they are. I don't recall them as somebody that we end up having to have a discussion about the inclusion numbers as a regular occurrence. So thank you, Commissioner Davis. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions regarding agenda item number 2? I'll make a motion that we adopt agenda item number 2. Is there a second? By Commissioner Repenning. Any objection? Without objection, we'll adopt agenda item number 2. Any issue sending number 2 forthwith? We'll send number 2 forthwith. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Commissioner Davis.
Thank you.
Agenda item number 4, requested grant application Council Districts 2, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 15, Bureaus of Sanitation and the Office of Community Beautification from the California Department of Forestry and Fire Protection Program and request for Public Works Trust Fund loan. And just bear with me for a moment. I've got to read this, Melinda, into the record to describe what we're doing on agenda item number 4, recommending that the board first approve and forward the report with its transmittal to the mayor and council with the recommendation that the city council, subject to the concurrence of the mayor, authorize the director of the Bureau of Sanitation or his designee to apply for, accept, negotiate, execute, and submit all grant documents, including but not limited to applications, agreements, and amendments subject to the approval of the city attorney as to form which may be necessary to receive funding if awarded a grant from the state of California, Department of Forestry and Fire Protection, CAL FIRE was what I'll call that now, for the project. A Greater Greener Los Angeles is the name of the project, not exceeding the amount of $1 million. Secondly, request the City Council, subject to the concurrence by the Mayor, to adopt the accompanying resolution authorizing the submission of the grant application to CAL FIRE and appointing the Director of the Bureau of Sanitation or his designee to conduct all negotiations, execute and submit all documents, including but not limited to applications, agreements, amendments, and payment requests, which may be necessary to carry out the purpose of this resolution in compliance with CAL FIRE requirements to complete the project and expend the grant funds prior to March 30th, 2020 if awarded the grant. Third, authorize a loan from the Public Works Trust Fund in the amount of $1 million payable to the Environmental Affairs Trust Fund to front fund the project until the grant proceeds are received on a cost reimbursement basis if the project is funded, something that's very standard process, by the way. Number 4, authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to release the Public Works Trust Fund loan as soon as copy of the grant award is received from the Bureau of Sanitation. Number 5, authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to assess and collect monthly interest on the loans at the rate that the Office of Finance is using to allocate interest to various investment pools. Any unpaid interest at the end of the year will be added to the principal amount of the loan. 6, request the Board of Public Works to authorize the Office of Community Beautification to amend contract C124509 or newer 2017-18 contract with the Los Angeles Conservation Corps to increase the contract ceiling by $1 million and to extend the contract to cover the grant implementation period ending June 30th, 2020 if the grant proposal is funded. 7, request the Board of Public Works to authorize the work up to $1 million. 8, authorize the Director of the Office of Accounting to transfer the $1 million from the Public Works Trust Fund number 834 to the Environmental Affairs Trust Fund number 537 and to appropriate said amount in the Environmental Affairs Trust Fund number 537, Department 50, new account for Greater Greener Los Angeles, and to make payments to the Los Angeles Conservation Corps and the Bureaus of Sanitation's expenses if the grant is awarded. 9, authorize the reimbursements from CAL FIRE to be deposited into the Environmental Affairs Trust Fund and subsequently to be transferred back to the Public Works Trust Fund upon receipt. And finally, number 10, request the Controller to make technical corrections as necessary. Thank you. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning, President
Thank you for
and
being here.
Commissioners, Bureau Representative, City Attorney, and Executive Officer. So I'm here to ask for permission and all the other stuff that goes with it to apply for $1 million to implement another tree planting grant. We want to plant 2,000 trees in low-income environmental justice communities. We're looking at both South LA and then also the area, it can reach all the way to Pacoima and Sun Valley and down below the Burbank Airport. We're looking at asking the grant, about half the grant goes into new tree wells with watering, and the tree wells would be opened up by LA Conservation Corps, and the water will go to one of the tree planting groups that works with us. The grant requires a match, and City Plants is providing that match through their funding from the Department of Water and Power. We're sort of splitting the costs between trees and labor. Again, all the work will be performed essentially by LA Conservation Corps. We're really looking forward to it and hope we're funded. Thank you.
Melinda, we really appreciate the work that you all do. This sounds like another great project, and we are optimistic about your success, obviously, and are happy to front fund this to be able to achieve that success. Commissioner Repenning?
Hi, Melinda. Hi, Amy. I just want to say I'm excited about this grant. Hopefully, we can get some more money for more trees. I'm a big fan of your work, and as I mentioned when we met, if we're going to be going into the Northeast Valley, let's look at opportunities to coordinate, with our sidewalk program, maybe with the DWP, to look at whether we could do some green infrastructure if we're going to be cutting into the sidewalks to put trees in. So it could be a good opportunity.
We're open to it. We just want to make those streets greener and bigger and have that canopy improved and increased.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Luz. Ms. Commissioner Rivas?
No, thank you for doing this. I know a lot of the areas that you mentioned, and definitely, we need trees out there. My question was, how will you select locations for the trees? Are you working with organizations in the community to do that, or the council districts?
We do. We work with anybody who's willing to work with us. The Cal EPA, Cal Enviro screen dictates where we can work. This is funded by AB 32 cap and trade dollars. We spend about half the money, again, on these new tree wells. So we're looking at Figueroa and then Vineland over between just, what are we calling it, south of the airport area. And so those are 350 trees that we know are cared for. The remainder of the trees, we need to find community groups, neighborhood councils that will help us talk to the residents and ask them to water the trees in their own yard or business space in the parkway.
Okay, so you'll be reaching out to neighborhood councils over the
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Rivas. Commissioner Davis?
I wanted to ask, in terms of the plans for Figueroa, is that along the Figueroa corridor?
It is. We call it the Figueroa corridor, and because we are able to do the watering that goes with it, the maintenance for the first 3 years till the trees are established, all we do is talk to the businesses and tell them this is going in at no cost or expense to you. And so they have an option to opt out if it's really going to bother them and they don't want the trees. One of the things that often happens is once we get out there and they start to see how many trees and how it changes the feel of the boulevard, they come back and say, well, wait, maybe we do want it now. So we want to accommodate all those requests. We really want the corridor to be totally greened.
Well, I really do believe that trees will certainly add value, and certainly we have a lot of development in the Figueroa corridor. We have a lot of stable institutions in that area, including USC. And so when I look at the economic development plans, I think this is a great asset to what we're doing there. And I also want to say that as we look at the issue of South LA in specifics, that there is a certain need for us to increase the trees in that area. And so I want to compliment you in terms of the work that you're doing throughout the city in general, and want to say that it will certainly add value as well to various areas of South LA where we are tree thirsty, if you will. So I applaud your work, and I look forward to you implementing some of the trees in the area. Thank you.
That's great. I want to just give you an update on the current project we're working. We did the Vermont corridor. We did more than 500 new tree wells on Vermont, and Amy went out and we've marked another 100 on Hoover. So we're Vermont, Hoover, and this one would do Figueroa. So we're really trying to march through that community and extend south into Watts and other places. The residential component, again, it's all driven by being in an environmental justice community, and we have mailed 10,000 requests to residents if they want a tree. And we need to work with our neighborhood councils and our nonprofits and folks, because if the residents hear from these other people, they are more likely to agree to have a tree and recognize the value rather than just hearing from us city workers.
I have only one concluding question. of those trees that we have selected, ficus is not one of them.
No.
Okay.
The right tree in the right spot.
I just wanted to know. I don't know if we'll be here 50 years later, but
We actually have to.
We'll hear about it.
We have to measure, once we know the species and put it in place, we mark it with a GPS marker, and you have to measure its growth rate over 40 years and the direction it's facing a building to calculate the greenhouse gas savings. So, and that's all required by ARB and CAL FIRE. So there's a lot of nuances and small issues that we work with.
Thank you, Commissioner Jacinto.
Thank you, President James. I just wanted to chime in, Melinda and Amy. It's a great project. I really like the community engagement, having tree planting events.
Yes.
Where stakeholders can interact. I'm being out there with Commissioner Repenning on some of the city plants last year and the grade 8th and the new 9th. Those are transformative, and people get a chance, and young people especially get a chance to participate and plant, and so very good engagement.
Great. And we like those events because we can invite all sorts of outside people in to help put the trees in the ground. So they're your strong environmental community or schools or whatever. But then when we hold the resource fair at the local park or a local school, you really engage the community, and they're coming over to see what sort of sustainability resources are out there. And it's not just city resources that we're sharing with them at that point. So it's great. We love it.
Anything else? Great, thank you. Is there a motion on agenda item number 4 by Commissioner Repenning, seconded by Commissioner Davis and Rivas? Any objection? Without objection, we will adopt agenda item number 4 and issue sending it forthwith. We'll send it forthwith. Thank you both.
Thank
we
you.
really look forward to the project, and we're happy to be able to participate and help.
Great.
Thank
you all.
Agenda item number 3. A request for authority to distribute a request for proposals and to negotiate a contract, salvage plastic and metal containers. This is from the Bureau of Sanitation and the Bureau of Contract Administration. Authorize the Director of the Bureau of Sanitation to distribute and advertise the transmitted request for proposals for collection, transportation, processing, and marketing of salvaged plastic and metal containers from the City of Los Angeles. Second, evaluate the proposals and select the most qualified proposers based on established proposed evaluation criteria. Third, negotiate contracts with the most qualified proposers. Return to the board for authority to award and execute the contracts, and return to the board for authority to, I just said that, to award and execute the contracts. Martin Ruiz. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, President James, Commissioner Rivas, Commissioner Repenning, Commissioner Davis, Commissioner Jacinto, Board Executives, City Attorney, and Bureau Representatives. I am Martin Ruiz, the Project Manager for the Plastic and Metal Salvage Containers from the City of Los Angeles. We are here today to request authorization to distribute and advertise the request for proposal for the collection, transportation, processing, and marketing of salvaged plastic containers and salvaged metal containers from the City of Los Angeles. The term of the contract will be for 5 years with a 5-year renewal option. This will be a revenue-generating contract and will not affect the general fund. Currently, the city sells the plastic and metal salvage containers to local recyclers. We recycle an average of 256,000 net pounds of plastic per month and generate average revenue of $62,000 per month. As shown in the pictures, the containers that we recycle are the residential curbside plastic containers, blue, black, green, and brown, automatic litter bins, metal wire mesh receptacles, white and green, and 1 to 6 cubic yards dumpsters, and the components which are the wheels and the axles. The city will evaluate the proposals, negotiate contracts with the select proposers, and will return to the Board of Public Works for authority to award and execute the contracts. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
Okay, so I'm trying to frame out my understanding of this proposal. We are proposing new plastic containers, is that?
No, we are salvaging the damaged plastic containers.
Right, okay.
It's a contract to recycle the containers.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
So who are we using now? to do
Pardon me?
this work? Who are we using now to do this work?
B&B Plastics.
And we have a one-off contracts with them, or how, the current status of our,
Still working with them.
okay. and the
But we
contract
have
is-
another company that was interested too in the proposal.
The contract is expiring?
We don't have contract, we have a verbal agreement
Okay,
with them. That's why we want to memorialize this with a contract.
okay. And we think it'll be competitive?
It will be. We have maybe two companies that are interested in this, and we hope we get more once it got to Alibaba.
Okay. We talked about the participation level goals for our business inclusion program. What is your sense? We've set them fairly low, primarily because most of the work is handled by the prime. There's not a lot of subcontracting that happens here. Correct?
That's correct. Most of the work is done by the contractor right now, but we'll encourage the contractors for looking for us subcontractor opportunities. We're talking to them about this.
And the axles we're actually reusing they get reused, correct?
Some of the axles get reused, but the ones that are very damaged, and they cannot be used, they are recycled, and they sell to metal recyclers right now.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else on agenda item number 3? Commissioner Repenning has made a motion that we adopt agenda item number 3, seconded by Commissioner Davis. Any objection? Without objection, we will adopt agenda item number 3. Any issue sending number 3 forthwith? We will send number 3 forthwith. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
We have, Mr. Campos, cleared the desk except for agenda item number 1.
That is correct.
Okay, so we have agenda item number 1. I have a couple of questions just regarding the process of our hearing this morning. Let me go ahead and introduce the item, and then we will take care of some of the procedural questions that I have. Agenda item number 1, Council District 11, appeal denial and approval of Coastal Development Permit CDP 16-14 Sunset Boulevard at Marquez Avenue project, recommending that the board deny the existing appeal and approve issuance of local CDP 16-14. And we will start with the Bureau of Engineering, Catalina Hernandez. We also have a couple of what I will call real parties in interest. And that is, besides the Bureau of Engineering, the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, the council office, and the appellant here, which is an LLC, 16974, that's represented by the Cordell and Cornelius Law Corporation. So what we do with our hearings is I don't put the 2-minute time limit on the real parties in interest themselves. So, Mr. Cornelius? Yes. Hi. So I see that you're here on behalf of your client. Are there individual clients that you represent that are in my stack here?
Yes, they are.
Okay, those names are what?
Jason Summers and Steven Summers.
Jason Summers and Steven Summers, and I have cards for both of them.
Yes.
Okay. Great. So we will start with, thank you, sir. We will start with Ms. Hernandez from the Bureau of Engineering.
Mr. President, just if I could, just for the record, just like we do with any other hearings, we did receive a couple of documents that were distributed to the commissioners, and the same documents are provided to those that are in the members of the public in the rear of the room if you'd like to take a look at them. So just for disclosure purposes, those have been distributed to the commissioners, and a set is also available for anyone that wants to view it in the room, in the rear of the room.
Thank you. And I would only ask, Debbie Donner-Harris, Council District 11, are there any time constraints on you regarding when you need to speak during the hearing? Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Good morning. I am Catalina Hernandez with the Environmental Management Group, Bureau of Engineering. I will give you a brief description of the project in question and an outline for our determination to issue the coastal permit. And staff from Department of Water and Power is available to answer more detailed questions regarding the project itself and the need. The project consists of a temporary pole-top distribution station, and this consists of two 61-foot-high poles, platform, transformers, and cross arms. The project is located in the public right-of-way on Sunset Boulevard at Marquez Avenue within the Brentwood Pacific Palisades Community Plan. The project was deemed necessary to alleviate the current power load in the Pacific Palisades community and to avoid prolonged power outages. The project is located within what is known as the Single Coastal Jurisdictional Zone, and this is under the jurisdiction of the City of Los Angeles. The project needs to meet certain requirements that fall under Chapter 3 of the Coastal Act in order to receive this permit. I will go through them in order. Public access to coastal resource. The current project does not provide coastal access, so there's no impact. Recreation. The project does not impact any recreational activities. Marine environment. There's no marine environment or resources within the project site. Land resources, such as environmentally sensitive habitat areas. The project does not provide suitable habitat for any endangered or threatened species. And development, which includes the location of the project and scenic qualities. Sunset Boulevard is a city-designated scenic highway. The project is within the public right-of-way, and every effort has been made to screen the structures from view. Approved measures such as painting the structures to minimize their appearance have been implemented. They were placed in an area where there are already other utility poles and light poles. And more importantly, there are currently no unobstructed ocean views at the project site. For example, if you walk like half a block, then you get a total view, and that would be a problem. But since there are no unobstructed views, we deem that it is not a major impact. Industrial development, the project does not constitute industrial development. And we did hold a public hearing on November the 9th at the Palisades Branch Library. 26 members of the public were in attendance. Comments were received before the hearing, and written and oral comments were noted. And after consideration of the comments, the decision was made to issue the coastal permit. Based on our findings described in detail in the final staff report and outlined in the board report, we recommend that the board deny the appeal and approve the issuance of local CDP 1614.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Hernandez before we move on? What I would like to do, thank you, ma'am. Regarding the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power, we have a few cards. Mr. Romalo, I'll speak to you first. We have a few cards. You all can speak in whatever order you would prefer. The same is true for Mr. Cornelius, whatever order you would prefer. And Mr. Romalo, for whoever you think would like to speak first, and whoever wants to respond to some of the appellant's issues will have that opportunity, as Mr. Cornelius will as well. So it's really up to you all.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. President and members of commissioners. My name is Joe Romalo. I'm an assistant general manager at LADWP. I'm joined this morning by Tina Shim from the city attorney's office, as well as Bill Harriet and Eric Hartman from our power system. And they are available to answer any questions or respond to any concerns or direct issues that come up. I wanted to start just by providing brief framing comments to give you some context and perspective on what we've been dealing with here. First and foremost, we don't like to do things that our neighbors and people don't want. We consider ourselves a good neighbor in the city. We try very hard to do that. In this case, we're dealing in the Palisades with a very, very challenging situation where power reliability has been compromised. We are not operating our system the way that we need it to, and that is primarily because we have a distributing station right now that was built in 1937, and we need to locate another permanent distributing station in the neighborhood. That has been a very lengthy and challenging process. And in the process, we've experienced a higher incidence of power outages and difficulty meeting the growing demand because homes get built with, replaced with bigger homes. People add things, development, natural growth that's occurred over what has really been the last 80 years in this area. The pole-top distributing station that's in question and the subject of today's appeal is one of two that are currently being built in the Palisades. The other is located right near Palisades High School at the corner there of Temescal and Sunset. We just got permission through the coastal development permit process to complete construction of that one. And this is not the last, unfortunately. While we search for a permanent site for the distributing station, we will need to locate at least two more pole-top distributing stations in the community. And we're geographically constrained. This can only be done in a way that splits the load on existing circuits in the area. And so our opportunities for construction are very limited. And once again, the construction is in the right-of-way, as Catalina mentioned to you, Ms. Hernandez. These are temporary structures. We've worked for years, as I mentioned, to build the new substation, and these are temporary solutions. We've been very open with the community about the problems there. We've held numerous community meetings. This decision to locate at Sunset and Marquez did not come quickly or hastily. We've worked very closely with Councilmember Bonin's office, which they can share with you as well, and we've engaged the community in a fully transparent and inclusive public process. These locations, in particular, the one at Temescal as well as this one, were selected after two community meetings in January and March of 2016, as well as further discussions and consultation with the council office. The location at Sunset and Marquez after that, those meetings, as well as a briefing of neighborhood council, as well as a formal public comment period, received overwhelming support from nearly 250 community members who submitted emails and comment cards citing this location as the preferred location for the temporary facility. The next most desired location was at Temescal and Sunset, which I've mentioned to you. We've most recently met with the new property owner. This property changed hands during this process. We considered and listened to their suggestions, specifically that this could be constructed on their property with a grant of an easement, and that they would allow that, and that it could be done on a pad-mounted basis. Unfortunately, that does not meet our needs as far as reliability and the urgency of the project. We had wanted this facility in place before last summer. Frankly, we got off easy because last summer was unusually mild. This summer, looking ahead, we need to construct this as quickly as we possibly can in order to start alleviating what are completely overburdened cables and wires and transformers and infrastructure in that community. All a part really of what is our infrastructure plan at DWP that we've been ramping up aggressively. All of the meetings that we held were publicized in advance, and the selected locations were reported on by local press. This entire issue has been well known by the entire community. Our construction has been pending the permitting and appeals process here for several months. The community really needs these facilities, and it's critical that we move forward with them. We would respectfully request that you deny the appeal and allow us to proceed. And again, we're available to answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Romalo. Any questions for Mr. Romalo at this time? Commissioner Jacinto?
Yes, sir. I just had a question in terms, for the record, how temporary do we feel that this application will be?
The simplest answer is until we can site and construct a new distributing station. We expect to begin the environmental review process formally this spring, early summer, and with multiple potential locations. It's been a very challenging process. It could be in excess of 3 to 4 years before we get the environmental review process completed, a site selected, designed, and constructed. And then you also have to consider that there could be legal challenges. When we met with the appellant, one of the issues came up is could we give them a date certain, 3 years from now, because they have a project that they want to build. We can't do that, but we can commit that this is a temporary facility. There have been instances in the city where we've not succeeded in building a DS where those pole-top distributing stations remain. So we want to be completely upfront and honest with you about that. These are equipment in the air in the right of way that we have the right to build, but obviously we try to do it in a place where it's not going to be opposed and compromise anyone else's concerns with their own property.
Mr. Romalo. Commissioner Davis?
So my understanding is that there's a need for 3 stations, correct?
There's a need right now to complete construction of these 2, and we're going to need 2 more pull-top distributing stations. We may need another after that as well. But at least right now, based upon the configuration and where they would be located, in order to split the electrical load in that community, we would need 4.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Romalo.
Thank you.
Mr. Cornelius, and that includes Mr. Stephen Summers or Mr. Jason Summers, however you prefer?
Yes, Stephen Summers is going to go first.
Okay. The only admonition, sir, that I would give you, that I'd give all of our real parties and interests, is that while we don't put the 2-minute time limit that we do on the other speakers, that we ask to be mindful of other people's time and to not be repetitive. Some people like to make the point over and over and over and over again, and I'll step in when that happens.
Absolutely. We will do our best to be mindful. I'm Stephen Summers. I am one of the owners of the property at 16970 Sunset, directly adjacent to where the pole-top distribution station is being installed currently. First, I wanted to just note, we handed out the Palisades News pamphlet. If you go to the third to last page, it has a full-size image of the pole-top distribution system. I would appreciate if you could all just take a look at that just so that you can see the scale and size of this. It is 60-foot tall poles in a single-family area with a massive pad in the middle, elevated in the air. The following pages have some renderings of what a pad-mounted transformer could look like. Even if it was a little bit larger than that, it is still a drastic improvement over the blight that is brought forth by the pad-mounted distribution station. Now, we would like to request one of 2 options today. Either the board uphold the appeal and deny the coastal development permit for the pole-top distribution station, or we are also requesting continuance of this item to a later hearing. And there are multiple reasons for that request. Those reasons include the fact that although this has been going on for quite some time now, several months that we've been in coordination with LADWP. The process actually started when I was driving by the property and saw several LADWP construction trucks on our private land without any prior permission, installing these poles that you see here today without any permits. I immediately contacted LADWP and other agencies, including the Coastal Commission, to urge that the proper permits and approvals be enforced on this installation. There was some additional construction that occurred following our notification to LADWP and the Coastal Commission, after which point the Coastal Commission confirmed that a large utility installation does require a coastal development permit. So we are now here today going through the proper process, which should have been gone through a year ago. And in light of that, when it came through the proper process, our group offered in writing an easement to provide a pad-mounted solution. So we are not saying that there should be no power installed in this location. We are trying to be reasonable. We understand that there are some needs of the community. What we are saying is that let's create an installation that is the best possible option. We, as private landowners, will work with the city to provide an easement for the pad-mounted solution. And we have put that in writing. LADWP has denied it and has not even created a conceptual draft of engineering plans for what would be required for a pad-mounted option. Not even a conceptual draft for that. We're coming forward as homeowners in the community, landowners, with support from the entire neighborhood and offering this really tremendous opportunity for a pad-mounted solution, and it's being summarily denied without proper consideration. We have also, as of today, we would like to offer to reimburse LADWP for the costs incurred to date for the above ground portion of the installation. Even though it was installed illegally, we would reimburse LADWP for those fees, which based on budgets that have been provided by the city attorney is roughly $61,000 for the above ground portion. Additionally, those poles, we have been informed, could be reused at a different location if they went with the pad mount in the future. So we are putting forward an offer to reimburse the cost that has been incurred of up to $61,000 for the installation to date. And finally, in light of those two items, the Pacific Palisades Community Council is going to be hearing this item shortly with the actual option of considering a pad-mounted solution in front of them. We feel that everyone owes it to the community and that it's just reasonable and the right thing to do to provide the Community Council the opportunity to weigh in and make a vote on this issue. They will be hearing it shortly. We don't have an exact date set yet, but they will be hearing it shortly. And in light of that, we request that this be continued to a later hearing. Now, it has been mentioned that there were a number of support letters for placing the power at the location that we're talking about right now. Those support letters all predate the coastal hearings and our offer to provide a pad-mounted solution. Once a pad-mounted solution became available, we have a petition with 242 signatures, as well as a Facebook post with over 900 supporters in support of a pad-mounted solution. This is the best solution for the community, and it's right there. We're just urging the city to reach out and take it, work with us, and let's make that happen. It's reasonable. Sunset is a scenic highway, and the community plan states very clearly that along a scenic highway, utility installations must be undergrounded to the maximum extent feasible. Maybe in the past a pad mount wasn't an option, but it is an option today. And so this pole top distribution station is not being undergrounded to the maximum extent feasible, plain and simple. The community plan has a rule and requirement, and it is not being adhered to. I implore you all to request that LADWP fully explore and vet the pad-mounted option. Put forward a design, and let's create a solution that actually is good for the community, provides the power, and does not provide the visual blight. Because as was brought up, one of you brought up a very good question about how temporary is temporary. Realistically, LADWP has been trying to find their permanent distribution station location for years and years and years. This could be here for 10 years. It could be here for 20 years. This could be here for 50 years. It could be here for longer. For all intents and purposes, for homeowners in the community, this is a permanent installation. And so let's make it a permanent installation that can be supported by the community, is actually an option that doesn't have this visual blight there for decades to come. There's an option on the table. I urge you all that we take it. Let me see if I had anything else. And one other item about the urgency of the situation with the power. It's been mentioned that LADWP really needs to have this installed shortly for power purposes. They have been looking for these stations for 5 years, and this whole process has been going on for many, many years. So, it's hard to say exactly how urgent this is. And also, had LADWP gone through the proper coastal development permit process a year and a half ago, then we could be at this point where we would have offered the pad-mounted solution, and it could be installed today. The fact that LADWP didn't go through the proper coastal development permit process should not give them carte blanche to then go forward with a worse option because of timing that they've basically put on themselves by not going through the proper permitting process from day one. And that's it. I'll pass it on to Alex now. Thank you all for your time. Again, we urge you to either support the appeal or request continuance so the Community Council can weigh in. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Cornelius.
Good morning. Mr. President and other panel members, thank you for taking the time to take up our issues. Mr. Summers has summarized the main issue here, is that this facility and installation went in without any permits, and because it was installed without permits, it brought the community out to say, what's going on here? How is this possible on Sunset Boulevard that you're building this? I understand that the DWP did have meetings prior to this and did in fact solicit input as to where the location should be. But then internally the DWP made a decision and didn't tell anybody. The next thing that people know on the outside is construction starts, there's trespassing on the property, trucks are there, no permits, and no notice to adjoining landowners or the landowner that's within 5-10 feet of our land, my client's land, that, hey, this facility's going in. So when the DWP says that they did community outreach and that this was the preferred location, I understand they did that. But when they selected the location, they didn't tell anybody. Nobody knew that they were going to do it. On the day they did it, they showed up and built without permits. So the pad-mounted solution has actually been discussed with the DWP, and it's acknowledged that it is, in fact, feasible. It's not something that we're suggesting can't be done. The equipment doesn't exist off the shelf from a manufacturer of electrical components. This is something that can be done and that they've acknowledged can be done. It's a question of the timing. I think Mr. Summers has explained we shouldn't be penalized and the community shouldn't be penalized for the DWP's actions. Turning to the staff report recommending approval, well, I just wanted to mention something about Mr. Romalo's comments. He acknowledged himself that this could be here forever. So when they talk about temporary, I think that this panel needs to take it with a grain of salt because there has been a lot of community press back in the Palisades. And I'll submit something. The DWP may have certain methodologies as to how they want to conduct these facilities. But the fact is, trying to put this kind of facility into a residential community when there's an alternative that you can put this structure at grade and then screen it with trees.
Say this structure, the alternative. You're talking about the cabinet. We'll call that the
yes,
cabinet.
Cabinet, pad-mounted structure at grade, and then screen it with trees. It's a much preferred solution. And frankly, their difficulty in finding locations for this is understandable. I submit that if they were telling the community, we're going to put these in, there'd be much less opposition. So the DWP should, in fact, reconsider in an area where it's highly single-family residential, community activists, they should perhaps look at a different approach. When the same equipment exists that will do the same job with much less visual impact, I think they'd have a lot more opportunities and a lot more locations where they could put in the PTSD, well, distribution stations because they'd be pad-mounted. They'd find that they could actually do them much easier and have less community reaction to them. I just want to point out on the staff report, it appears the staff report is relying on information that the DWP provided after the issuance of Ms. Hernandez's actual report that supported the issuance of the permit. So I feel that in a way we haven't really been given all the information until this hearing. And if the staff recommendation, particularly on page I think it's particularly on page 6, talks about things that were later provided by the DWP. I'm not sure if those things were even considered by Ms. Hernandez. So to say that there's information that came later is really a denial of due process. If Ms. Hernandez should have or could have relied on it, it should have been given to Mrs. Hernandez beforehand, should have been included in her report, and I should have, and my client should have had an opportunity to review that and make issues as appeal on it. For us to find out that there's other information after the permit's issued that it's relied on is not due process. I think one of the issues that the staff knocks down is that we think that this does not comply with CEQA. Now, the staff does not actually look at the issues of CEQA, which is that this is not an emergency. They've known about it for over 5 years, so it's not a defined emergency. And it's also not a utility extension, it's a distribution. It's a pole top distribution station. The reason that I submit the community didn't understand or know that there was a CEQA notice of exemption filed is because the DWP did not seek and submit for a permit. So you have a notice of exemption of CEQA floating out here without connection to a permit, without notice to the community that there's going to be work done pursuant to this notice of exemption. I feel that, frankly, it puts the DWP in a very bad position because no one goes and peruses the city's notice binders or notice website for CEQA permits unless they're tied to work being done, unless you know that there's a permit being issued, that the work being described in this permit is going to be exempt from CEQA. There was no permit. There was no permit submitted. So people don't go searching for CEQA notices of exemption unless they're saying, oh, they're going to do work, and they say it's exempt from CEQA. So they did it backwards. You can't go seek a notice of exemption for work that you haven't sought a permit for. You have to seek a permit and then say in the permit, we think that CEQA is exempt. So to suggest that the time to appeal the CEQA notice of exemption has expired, we don't want to litigate. I don't want to litigate. My clients don't want to litigate. We've offered a great solution. But to suggest that somehow that was proper when there was no permit to relate to the notice of exemption is not appropriate. And it will come back, and it will be something that will affect this later on if we cannot get a solution. I think you've seen the pictures, or we would request you look at the pictures. I don't think painting 60-foot poles is screening them. Screening means trees, fencing. Painting a pole does not do anything to diminish the visual blight. To say that they've done the maximum extent to put this in the ground or to comply with the general plan is not accurate. Painting a pole that's 60 feet with a huge black transformers and wires is not any kind of screening. So I think it's a bit Orwellian to say that you can paint those poles and that they'll be screened. I just was going through the report. Mr. Summers hit many of these points already.
That's fine, sir.
Yeah, I just wanted to okay, I'm really looking at finding number 7 on page 7. There's a number of issues that are discussed here about the DWP visited and visually inspected the site, and that they've had existing poles many years, not found that they were proven to be in stable ground. None of this was included in Ms. Hernandez's report. This is all new information. So I'm not sure where the staff that prepared your analysis got it, but it was provided by the DWP after the fact. We didn't have it in time to appeal and to address it at the time. And we do think that the fact that these are exterior pad mount or exterior elevated transformers, there is scientific evidence, and it's included in our appeal, that there are higher EMF emissions from such structures, and that there is evidence submitted in our appeal that in fact a pad mounted system limits the EMF transmissions because it is surrounded, encased in steel, and that can also include a concrete wall around it as well as further screening. So we think for the community, in particular this community, that's why a pad mounted solution makes much more sense. I think that's primarily my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Summers.
Commissioners, thank you very much for seeing us today. I'll be brief. Mr. Cornelius ends on a really great note, is that we are building a single-family dwelling in this location, and to be able to limit what's exposed to this house and be able to be granted this easement is what we're trying to do here. Imagine having your home next to these 60-foot tall pad-mounted elevated transformers. And one thing to note is during the original public hearings, the neighbors adjacent to these proposed poles were not notified. It was a hearing that had mainly people that were opposing these elevated poles at the elementary school in Pacific Palisades that supported an alternate location to the elementary school. Clearly, people don't want these next to an elementary school. We don't want them next to a home. The solution has been provided. We would really appreciate and respect the opportunity for DWP and the commission to work with us, as the Assistant General Manager stated, working with the community to make the best solution possible, which also goes along with the community plan for the Pacific Palisades, which states very clearly to make them underground to the maximum extent possible. Thank you very much for hearing us today.
Thank you, sir. I have a few other speaker cards before we go to the council office, and then I would like to hear. I'm sure we'll have some questions along the way, and there was a settlement offer letter of sorts that warranted a response from the city attorney. So I will want to hear from the city attorney on that. I have Lowell Caulfield. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Thank you for taking the time with this issue. My name is Lowell Caulfield. I am here representative of Pacific Investment Company, which is owner of the Pacific Gardens Apartments, which is directly between the Ocean Bluff and the Pole Top Distribution Station. And the property's owner is directly across Marquez Place from us. We have 47 units in the apartment building, half of which face the ocean, half of which face what we call mountain views. So people move into this 1950s buildings for the ambiance and for the environment, the beautiful environment around it. A little bit of a backstory, though. This property, which they purchased for years, has been a real problem for our property because there have been homeless encampments in there. We've had people break into our building. We had a woman with a machete out there, many police calls. So we were really delighted when these developers came and bought the property and said they were going to put in low-impact housing in there because it was going to solve the homeless problem and, you know, spruce up the grounds. The first notice that we had that anything was going on was when the trucks arrived one day and parked on the property and the poles began going up. We received absolutely no notice, even though we're directly impacted by this and our views are directly impacted by this, at all from you folks or anyone else. Then we found out about a hearing, which was at the public library, which was previously mentioned. A hearing, by the way, which was well attended, and overwhelmingly people there were against this installation. The idea that those comments were taken into consideration by the engineering office is they didn't take them into consideration because there was a lot of opposition there. And they were seeking a permit, and the permit itself even said that no construction could begin until the coastal permit was granted, and yet the construction already began. So that had people kind of ticked off. What I wanted to do was, I'm just going to pass these pictures. You can put them down. These are the views from our building.
2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Mark Zussman.
Good morning. Thank you for letting me address you today. My name is Mark Zussman. I'm a 55-year resident of Marquez Mills in Pacific Palisades. I've had 5 children go to Marquez Elementary, now called Marquez Charter School, and I was also one of the members, asked to be a member of the DWP task force that was put together of citizens in the community. I think in 2015, we worked for about 6 or 7 months on evaluating about 14 different sites where to put the permanent switching station. Of those sites, the Bernheimer Garden site, which is what we're talking about, this is where this pole mount facility is supposed to be. It's always been referred to as Bernheimer Gardens. That, I believe, was evaluated and rated by the task force the #1 spot to put the permanent switching station, if my memory is correct. The spot that DWP owns, which is right next to Marquez Elementary was rated number 14. I thought that once the pole top suggestion alternative came out by the DWP, that it was finally settled, that this dispute that went on for a long time, we had an answer to it, to put on this pole top, which would
2
be
minutes.
there, would be there for a few years until they found something permanent. But I continued to hear opposition in the local newspapers, letters to the editor, that type of thing. And one thing...
Sir, our time limit's up, so you can finish up on your point.
All right. My point is, I'm here for the children at the school. Most of these people that don't want it near their property want it next to the school. There are 500 kids there. No one ever brings up the kids. The facility that DWP was going to put in there has no roof on it and was 9 feet from the playground. That's why I am here. No one's paying me to be here. I don't represent anyone. I think to put it next to Bernheimer Garden is a good solution. In closing, I support the denial of the appeal and the approval of the issuance of the CDP 1614. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Jay Krugman?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Just as a matter of business, I think I filled my card out wrong. I support the appeal.
Okay. Go ahead.
I represent 145 homeowners in the neighborhood at Edgewater Towers, which is right down the block. As we're being inundated with developers and the general tone of the sleepy little Palisades is changing with huge trucks, big condos, the Caruso project, etc., I would ask you to realize that small area of Sunset Boulevard is the last area where you can actually see the ocean. And I don't need to reiterate what everybody said about trucks showing up without regard, about a hearing where credible scientific people provided alternatives which appeared not to be taken at all under consideration. I can tell you from my years of living in the Palisades, we've been hearing for years and years about DWP's desire to build a station, but there's no plan in place. The word temporary, which could be forever, I mean, with all due respect, I think if nothing else, we deserve a fair hearing. We deserve consideration. I think what our representatives have stated as far as a continuance, as far as our ability to look to work with the system, not simply rail against the system, I think we deserve the time, and I think we deserve proper focus. And I think the fact that we come to this meeting today with finding out there are new documents that we didn't even know existed reflects how DWP interacts with the neighborhood, regardless of what the representative stands here and says how much they work with the neighborhood. Temporary doesn't mean anything. What is forever? And Sunset Boulevard, it's the last vistas of the ocean. And I would ask you guys to consider 150 units
2 minutes.
are asking for you to either maintain the appeal or to give the continuance so we have fair time and focus to present our case properly. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir. Daniel, looks like Fern. I'm sorry if I said it wrong. Danielle, let's try that.
Hi.
We apologize for that.
That's okay. Thank you very much.
Go right ahead.
My name is Danielle Fern. I am a resident and homeowner in the Marquez Knolls neighborhood. I attended all of the various hearings that the DWP has held, including the one at the library that's been referred to, and previous community meetings that the DWP held. And I first of all want to commend the DWP for engaging the community and for listening to the community's voice. I am one of the very many voices who supported the DWP in its selection of what we're calling the Bernheimer Garden site. And I support the DWP continuing with that site. I would support the rejection of the appeal if it is feasible to pad mount the pole top facility. I imagine that the community would support that, but if it's not feasible and there's an urgency to move forward, then I, as a member of the community, support what needs to be done at that site on the Bernheimer Garden property at Sunset and Marquez Boulevard. In terms of views, I just want to point out that Sunset is a very busy thoroughfare. There are several apartment buildings. It's not, I know it's technically a scenic byway, but it's not particularly scenic. People don't drive. It's a very busy thoroughfare. The facility that's partially built that's there blends in fairly well to the environment. There isn't much of a view that people look at. It's mostly people speeding down Sunset as a busy thoroughfare. It seems like an appropriate place for that kind of facility.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Brian Deming?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Some photos, and I'm here representing the Pacific Palisades Residents Association. If I could, there's 10 there, and then 5 sets of those. And it has some telling pictures there. I'd like to read a part of the statement to avoid reiteration, and then speak on behalf of the Pacific Palisades Residents Association and Pacific Palisades as a bigger thing. So for decades, Pacific Palisades Residents Association has worked to preserve the environment and scenic nature of Pacific Palisades and ensure that all development and infrastructure improvements are done in compliance with applicable law. We present today in support of the newly available pad-mounted alternative to the pole-top distribution station proposed for Marquez Knolls neighborhood along Sunset Boulevard, and in opposition to the approval of coastal development permit for the pole-top distribution station in this location. So we have support for the appeal and support for a continuance to consider this pad-mounted option as a new option that became available just, how long have you owned the property? It has not been that long, and you've been such a miracle to the neighborhood. Thank you. November, okay. To our knowledge, it has not been considered appropriately given the concerns for the neighborhood. And I also feel that if the community is informed of this new pad-mounted alternative, that you would have overwhelming support for it. I live next door to this property. I support this. In a different viewpoint on the Marquez thing, I can say that I have not heard people from Area 3 and Area 2 supporting the Marquez school as an option. It's geologically, logically, reasonably, and parentally unacceptable. But this pad-mounted option is what it's just come to our attention, and this is the answer. And it's been, I've lived in the Palisades for 8 or 9 years. It has always been on everybody's horizon, this looming cloud that this is the solution. If the owner of the property immediately adjacent to the pole-top distribution
Sir, you'll
station...
be wrapping up now like everybody else. Go ahead, sir.
Okay. Sorry, say that one.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Make your final point like everybody else at the end of the time.
So this pole-top distribution station is the pad-mounted alternative is across the sidewalk. You can see in the photos there. The last page has an illustration of that sidewalk. It's the area to the left. This easement offers generous gift to the Pacific Palisades community as a whole, and one that the Pacific Palisades Residents Association strongly encourages the DWP to consider and accept. Please, please. With this easement, the DWP will be able to construct a pad-mounted temporary distribution system that will conform to all the laws.
Thank you, sir.
Permits. Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. We have, I believe, Benjamin, and it looks like Hanlon to me. I'm sorry if I mispronounced or anything. Go ahead, sir.
You got it right. Honorable
Go ahead, sir, sorry.
Honorable President, honorable commissioners, thank you very much for taking the time to hear this today. I urge you to deny the appeal, and that's not because I don't understand the concerns of the property owners, but it's because I think there really has been substantial notice to the community. I think the community does in large part support locating a facility at this location. Now, of course, if DWP wants to continue its dialogue with the new property owners, I think there's every opportunity to do that. But what you're called on here today is to evaluate whether a coastal development permit should be granted. And that's really a very narrow question. And I think staff clearly outlined how there aren't any coastal impacts as a result of this facility. I really have, I must thank DWP and the council office for engaging the community. There were multiple hearings at the community council. There was a meeting at a school, and I in fact received notice that this thing was going up. I think there's evidence that the community had noticed that this was going up because there are emails to DWP and to the council office thanking them for listening and choosing this alternative location. I of course understand that as a new property owner, this could be disconcerting. However, at the end of the day, that not having knowledge of this either is a function of not doing proper diligence or the seller not disclosing it. And of course I feel for them, but that's not an issue that should hold up the city's ability to move forward with a power solution for many thousands of people in Pacific Palisades. So I encourage the dialogue to continue. However, I'm very concerned that a continuance here or a granting of the appeal will only lead to further delay. You already heard discussion of potential litigation. That's even additional delay. I think we need certainty. I think DWP needs to understand that it can move forward with this option if it chooses to. I think DWP needs to be encouraged to continue the dialogue, but I don't see a reason for granting the appeal based on what has been presented in the staff report and based on what the appellant has provided today. Just really quickly, on the issue of views, views are not obstructed from Sunset Boulevard. If anything, the developer's plans to build 3 homes on this property would obstruct any views that might exist on the property. No views exist, much more than this temporary distribution system. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. So thank you for everyone that put in cards and sticking close to our time limit. I have a couple of questions. One question for the council office to respond to the request for a continuance, for the DWP to respond to a request for a continuance, or Ms. Debbie Downer-Harris to speak for the council office before we have the continuance discussion. It's up to you.
I'd like to speak first.
Okay, go ahead. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your patience.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Debbie Diner-Harris. I'm District Director for Council Member Mike Bonin, and I'm here today to support the DWP's application and oppose the appeal. I think the previous speaker said it very clearly. Before you is simply a coastal development permit. It's a very narrow permit. The Department of Water and Power normally, they install these all over the city. You've seen them. Maybe you don't even notice them because they're just part of our landscape. We have one that was installed, I don't know, maybe a year ago at Mandeville and Sunset. They just put it up. It's not in the coastal zone. They're allowed to do that through their ability as a utility provider. The reason that we're here today is because it happens to be in the coastal zone. As you've heard from the staff report, this does not prevent any public views. It does not infringe on any use of the coastal resources. There is no issue that we can see that this would preclude you from approving the project and denying the appeal. The council member, as you've heard, the distributing station, the permanent distributing station has been an issue in this neighborhood for several years. And I think Mr. Zussman mentioned that the community had the review panel that was formed, and he had mentioned 2015. It was actually before that. A couple of years before that, it was under Bill Rosendahl. So this is an issue. And when the council member heard that DWP wanted to install a temporary distributing, 2 pole tops actually, he said, you need to go to the community. I'm not going to allow this to happen unless the community really has a review. And that's how this started. They went to the Palisades Community Council. We had a meeting at the elementary school, and we're here. And while I'm sorry that the property owners the information was lost in the transition for the property owners, that doesn't matter. This is still public right-of-way. We are still allowed to install public utilities in the right-of-way if they serve a purpose. And this serves a purpose. We are at a situation where we have outages in the Palisades for no reason.
There's not a weather incident. We just have power outages all the time, and we get calls all the time from people who are very frustrated and who know that this is a conversation we've been having and wanting to know, when is the pole top coming in? When is the permanent distributing station coming in? We want to be able to answer them. We have been involved in communications between the appellant and DWP. We've tried to encourage that communication. There has been communication. They have offered a pad mounted on their property. I think DWP will be able to answer why that doesn't work for them. And I think most importantly, by delaying this, we are delaying a very necessary public infrastructure project that affects significantly more people than just this property and the people immediately adjacent, and DWP can address that as well. There are thousands of people, not just in the Palisades, who are impacted, but also elsewhere. So we need to keep that in mind. The city does not protect private views. We have no responsibility to do that. And yes, we want to be able to have people have a beautiful environment. We also need to provide power. There were a couple other things that were said that are not quite accurate, but I believe that other people did refer to them about people in support or in opposition. I think we do understand there is significant support for this location. I also want to say that there was a reference that DWP installed this without permits. Again, DWP did not need a permit to install an infrastructure facility at this location except for that coastal permit. And yeah, they did mess up. They didn't know they needed a coastal permit. But now they fixed that, they've gone back, and we've done that. But the facility itself, the one on Sunset in Mandeville, didn't need permits, and they installed it. So that is a little bit of an untruth, I would say. So other than that, I think everything has been said, but I think it would be great to hear from DWP, and they can respond to some of those things. Do you have any questions before I sit down?
Thank you, ma'am. For the council office, Commissioner Davis.
I wanted to ask, does the councilman have a position or an opinion on the pad-mounted solution?
The council member's opinion is, if DWP feels that that is something they can do in terms of financial feasibility, timing feasibility, access to the facility, easements, if DWP feels that that's something they want to do and that will provide in a timely fashion the service we need, that's fine, he'll support that. But that's not the information that we've heard from DWP at all. We haven't heard that. So
he defers to DWP's opinion of pad-mounted solutions. But personally, he doesn't have a problem with it.
We've asked the hard questions to make sure that DWP is indeed being upfront about whether they can wait for a pad mount or not. The council member wants to provide service to his constituents. That is his job. He also wants to create a beautiful environment. That's his job too. But that infrastructure, that ability for their lights to work, for their cell phones to charge, and it's more than just these people immediately adjacent. It's a much larger community.
The bottom line is he can support it if DWP supports it.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions for the council office? Thank you. I've got, and it really is DWP regarding whether our city attorney would like to respond on the continuance issue. Maybe the pad mount goes into that as well, or Mr. Hartman, any of the other issues that you all have heard from. Thank you, ma'am.
Yeah. Good morning. This is Tina Shim. I'm one of the deputy city attorneys, and I'm here on behalf of LADWP. So I submitted to all the council members a copy of a letter that was sent yesterday, and attached to it are about 125 letters from the community supporting the project at the current location. And what the letter states is that DWP does formally oppose any continuance, and DWP also urges this council or this board to oppose or to deny the appeal. And the main reason is the delay of time. Mr. Hartman will address the reasons why this pad mount solution is not feasible, but the main problem is that any change in design, any change in what is constructed would result in a minimum of a year delay. Ditto for a continuance. A continuance of 60 days will again stifle our ability to put that solution in place as quickly as possible. And the DWP has formally rejected the offer that was given to us, that settlement offer. And the reason why is that the proposal does not address the time delay. DWP is happy to continue discussions with the appellant, and certainly if a solution is presented that does not result in a delay in our ability to provide an immediate solution, then of course we would be receptive to that. And I will defer.
Just so we're clear, though, I'm clear, but I want to make sure the record's clear. You're saying that, and Mr. Hartman will speak to some of the substance from the utilities perspective, but from your office's perspective regarding the settlement proposal, you'll continue discussions on possible options as long as it doesn't create a delay in the ultimate result, which I think the council office very competently described, which means that you are still calling for the denial of the appeal and the granting of the permit. And upon that action, then the city attorney's office is willing to discuss a potential alternative resolution within those parameters.
Correct, and this is really only the first of several appeals that we anticipate the appellant will file. So DWP is amenable to continuing discussions throughout that process, but we are asking that this appeal be denied now, that the project continue to move forward in this process.
So that the process can begin.
Correct, because we must continue with installing that PTDS because no solution has been proposed which would not result in a time delay, and that is our critical need.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hartman?
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
Quickly, just a couple things. One is that DWP is here to provide reliable power to the community, and thus the urgency. This particular circuit that we're trying to improve is currently overloaded by nearly 120%. So you can see that there is a pretty big urgency in order to get this pole top facility installed. As Tina mentioned, going with the pad mount solution, we don't have any pad mount type solutions for this particular configuration anywhere in the city. Pole tops, we have 34 of them currently throughout the city all over, okay? So it's a very common solution for us, either for temporary or for a permanent configuration. I do want to say that the picture that the...
I'm sorry to interrupt you along the way.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I apologize, it may happen a couple of times. But just to be clear on this, regarding the description of the infrastructure that you've just provided.
Correct.
Is the statement from the DWP that upon installation of that the power needs of the community are going to be met, recognizing that we have a temporary issue versus a permanent issue, but
Correct.
At least temporary, whether temporary is a year or 2 or 3, that the power needs of the community that the council office eloquently stated is going to be met.
Correct. The reliability issues
I guess that's a better word for me.
Yes.
Okay.
The reliability issues for the neighborhood will be improved as a result of installing this facility.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Okay. I also want to point out that the appellant had handed out this picture to you of a metal box, on a pad. For our particular installation, that would be one of 6. Okay, so there would be many. It would be very large. We would also probably want to build a wall around it to prevent vandals from getting to that facility, as well as that wall would be 10 feet high and would perhaps block more views than what these poles currently are potentially blocking, if you will. So I believe it's probably much more of a blight than say the pole tops, as they're mixing in with the rest of the power infrastructure as well as the street furniture and infrastructure that's along Sunset Boulevard as it stands now. The other thing is just a reiteration of time. If we go to the pad-mounted solution, it will cost us a great amount of time, as we'll have to then go back, revisit the engineering process, buy specialty equipment that we've never bought before, as well as we'll have to go back through the CEQA process and then go through the whole coastal development permit process. So that in itself will take us probably at least 12 months, if not 18 months to get done. And it certainly won't solve our power reliability issues there in the neighborhood. Last thing I wanted to mention is that as the council office has mentioned, they work very well with us over time. We met with the community in January as well as in March. But we also met with the Pacific Palisades Community Council in May of 2016 to announce the actual locations of where these pole tops were going, both at Temescal and Sunset, as well as Sunset and Marquez. So we did reach out to the community in the best way we could, and with the council office's help. So I think we really reached out as best we could to it. And not only that, but the Palisadian Post issued quite a number of articles to the community with regards to our activities, our need to reach out to the community and describe to them what we needed to do and get their input, and then the final outcome of that. Okay, any other questions?
Thank you, sir. Ms. Shin, yes.
I'd like to just clarify two more issues because this has come up repeatedly. There is no requirement in the coastal development permit that we've sought for it to be temporary. There's no such thing as a temporary permit in the Coastal Act.
Understood that. Right.
And the second clarification that I wanted to make to the photographs, which are inaccurate, the majority of this proposed project is indeed underground, but there is no escaping the fact that poles will need to be installed, because what is being done with this project is that the underground circuitry is feeding the overhead line. So the photographs that were presented are extremely misleading because there will still be poles.
So it's fair to say that even if going underground still requires an above-ground apparatus.
Correct, because we're intercepting an overhead circuit that runs right along Sunset. So we'll still require at least 2 poles to put that apparatus in and make that interception.
So the pad-mounted solution as proposed at a minimum will require the 10-foot wall and poles nevertheless, as well as more pad mounts. The single pad mount, again, is also misleading because it would probably be at least 3 to 5 boxes, something of that nature.
6.
Okay, roughly. Thank you. Commissioner Davis?
From
Mr. Hartman?
Mr. Hartman. Yes. So I do understand your testimony that there would be a hardship in terms of time and, of course, our goal on the project to implement
Correct.
the access to power for the neighborhood. Now, this whole issue and discussion about pad mountain solution, this is new technology?
It's not necessarily new technology, but it is something that the Department of Water and Power does not typically do for circuits of this nature.
So
we'll do it for a particular single customer, but
if it's not new technology, how long has it been out?
I really can't say.
It's been out a long time?
It's been out. We have similar structures for customers since about 2000, so roughly about 16 years.
We've used it in other circumstances.
Correct, but not in this particular configuration, typically because that configuration is utilized for single customers, where we have a good customer relationship, and if we need to take power out for any reason, we're able to reach out to that particular customer, make that contact, and make arrangements with that customer to make that outage. With this particular installation, we're talking about a couple of thousand customers on that single circuit, and that is not necessarily the best solution for that area.
Sure. So I understand that we won't use it in this particular circumstance
Correct.
at this particular time. But this is a technology that we've used before and that perhaps in the future may be used. Is that?
And perhaps maybe the only other thing I'd like to point out, that prior to the appellant making his offer back in December, November timeframe, this pad mount solution takes up a considerable amount of land, which in the public right-of-way, there's not a lot of it. And in order for us to install it, we would have to find through some eminent domain process to acquire this type of property, which we don't have. And so the best, most expedient solution was to do the pole tops.
So you're saying with the underground equipment that goes with the pad mount solution, that it takes up more property?
It's fairly large. Yes, you're looking at roughly about 60 by 100 feet.
Underground cables?
Overhead, above ground pad mount
Oh, I see.
space.
When I saw the model of it, it was just...
It looks very small,
yes,
correct,
sir, it does.
but it's just one. And as we have mentioned,
So in
it'll
this
take
case,
6.
hypothetically, this would have taken more than one, is what you're saying?
Correct.
I see. Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. Commissioner Jacinto.
Thank you, President James. You know, colleagues, I appreciate this hearing, the ability to hear for the appeal of the proponents, the history about it too. I want to focus in on, I think our primary responsibility for the Board of Public Works and our capacity is really to support the development of infrastructure to our city residents, to our businesses. And so, President James, I want to focus on your statement to Deputy City Attorney Shim that there will be continued discussions about alternatives. But I'm ready to, based on the testimony and the facts, ready to support the denial of the appeal and to move forward with the coastal permit.
Okay, so that's a motion from Commissioner Jacinto. Seconded. I'll second it. Any objection? Without objection, that'll be the order. Any issues, sending it forthwith? We'll send it forthwith. Yes, I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Wanted to weigh in with some comments here. What I've heard through this hearing is actually a deep level of engagement from the utility with the community. It sounds like this is one moment in a conversation that started several years ago and that will continue for several years. It sounds like there's a very big challenge of siting the permanent infrastructure that everyone is, going to continue to be engaged with. It sounds like the siting of this temporary facility in itself had a lot of engagement. We see, we see a good amount of support for it, which means that people understand that there were other options and that this is, it appears to me that this seems to be the best option available right now. So I'm with my colleague Commissioner Jacinto in supporting the denial of the appeal.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Repenning. Commissioner Davis, anything?
No, I just hope that in the future, I appreciate the issue being presented to us today and the willingness to explore possibilities in terms of what the hopes and the vision is for residents and landowners in the area in the future. And certainly we want to support the leadership of the council member who has identified that what is much more imminent is the delivery of this power and service now. But having said that, I hope that in the future, should there be some opportunity for us to embrace technology that perhaps would be a part of what the community hopes for in terms of being kind of novel in some way that does not appear to be in the future for them obstructive in any way, that in the future, hopefully we might do that. So my hope is that certainly we don't want to stop progress, and we support the proposal of the DWP. I just have hope that in the future, as we move forward and as technology presents itself, that if in fact there are some alternatives in the future, that we will be open to those as well. So I support the motion, and I have hope for the future technology that might be available.
Thank you, Commissioner Davis. In closing, and not to be too repetitive, I think Debbie Diner-Harris's comments on behalf of the council office really summarized well my thoughts on this. I agree. We need to provide the utility service. We need to provide power to the thousands of residents in the Pacific Palisades that are affected. Based on what I've heard from both sides, recognizing that we hear from both sides regularly here, that's our job, and we weigh what we hear. I agree with Commissioner Repenning on the collaboration and the level of involvement through the council office, through the Department of Water and Power, and the various community organizations, including the local press that has been involved on this. So with that, I also support the motion. So that the appeal will be denied as requested by the Bureau of Engineering, and the permit will be granted, and without objection, we'll send the item forthwith. Thank you, everyone, for your participation, to the appellants, your counsel, the residents that came here today, and to the Department of Water and Power and the council office. Thank you, everyone. Mr. Campos, have we cleared the desk?
Yes, you have.
We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.